Alrighty, so this video is probably not going to get many views, but I don't really care because my goal is just provide value and not worry about the views. So today I'm going to share with you how you should structure /or take sales calls, whether you are a beginner, whether you are advanced, whether you are medium. It doesn't matter what kind of level you are. This is how you should be structuring and actually taking your sales calls. And this is because lately, a lot of my partners, a lot of people that I coach and consult and mentor, I've noticed that there's a huge disconnect when it comes to people hopping on the call and understanding the difference between pitching somebody and actually selling for somebody or closing somebody, right? And so my goal, my objective with this video is to show you how you can very simply, without a script, okay, without having to memorize a bunch of things and without having to go against human behavior, right? A lot of these tricky, weird sales tactics go against human behavior and human psychology, which makes it very difficult to, one, say the words. That's why it always feels very awkward to say the script, and two, to actually close anybody because it goes against who we are as humans, inherently as we are. So my goal is to provide a bunch of value so that you can take better sales calls, so you can close more people and help more people out. So let's dive right in. The kind of framework we're going to be using is something called NEPQ. Okay, which if you look this up, this term has been coined by Jeremy Miner, one of the greatest sales coaches, sales closers of all time, and this stands for neurological emotional persuasion questioning. Okay, neurological emotional persuasion questioning, which is simply in easy terms, in baby terms, is simply a way of asking questions to get somebody to some certain state to help them make some sort of decision, right? So it's asking a sequence of questions to help somebody get to a state in which you want them to go, right? Which is why it's neurological emotional persuasion questioning, right? So the goal is to kind of persuade them, but not in any weird way, okay? So the framework is called NEPQ. If you want to search it up or you want to watch who kind of invented this, if you will, it's Jeremy Miner. Now, granted, for some context, there's a couple of other things we'll talk about in here, like something called NLP, which is which is popularized by Tony Robbins, which stands for Neurological Linguistic Programming, which is some cool stuff in the mind. You can go look it up. Eli Wild has a ton of really good stuff on this. But nonetheless, let's get into the actual juice of this video and talk about how you should structure, how you should frame your sales calls. First things first, one quick thing: if you don't know the basic fundamentals of what is a sales call and why do we even ask questions on the sales call, I'll link the video down below. There's another video I talked about, which is like 32 minutes of sales training tips from Jeremy Miner, something like that. You can go watch it. It's really good. It talks about the basic fundamentals of sales and how we should ask questions and why we even ask questions in the first place. Because in sales, you should only ask a question if, one, you know why you're asking it, and two, if it pushes the sale forward. So let's kind of dive into how you should structure the call. Right? What do you do when somebody hops on the call? What phases do you go through? What questions do you ask? What script you should use? How do you actually get them to close? How do you actually get them to buy? And the first thing we have to understand with this is that when we want to get somebody to buy, right? So if we think of sales, right, the point of sales is just this. It's just change, right? The whole point of the sales call is to get somebody to make a change. That's it, right? If they didn't want to buy, they wouldn't be there. If they already wanted to buy, they would have already paid you. So the reason why they're there is they need help making a decision. They need help making change. And you are going to help them do that by following this particular process. So there's 9 phases, okay? Or at least as Jeremy Miner describes it, there is 9 phases in the sales call. Okay, we'll talk about the 9 different phases, what they are, what they do, and also how you can memorize and what questions to ask for each one of these 9 phases. I'm first going to list them out, and then I'm going to talk more in detail about all of these 9 phases. So bear with me. Take out your notepad, get your whatever notepad, Notion, whatever out, because these 9 phases you're going to want to remember for the rest of your entire life. So phase number 1 is called the connection phase. Okay, connection. And bear with me. I'm drawing on my mouse here. Okay. It's the connection phase. The point of this phase is to take the focus off of you and put it on the prospect. It is to get their underlying reason why they are on this call in the first place. That is the best summarization I could ever give of the connection phase, right? A lot of people like to build a lot of BS rapport, and I was one of them. I used to always, try to talk about the weather and their favorite sport and where they went to school for literally minutes and minutes and minutes, and then after 15, 20 minutes, all of a sudden, I hadn't yet even done anything close to selling them, and then I would realize that the time was running out, so I'd go to pitch them, and then nobody would close, and that's when I realized I had to change. And so one thing I urge you not to do is don't build BS rapport, right? A lot of people think rapport has to be in the sense of, they have to like me. And well, that's not entirely true, because rapport is just trust, right? And for somebody to trust you, they don't have to necessarily love you and be like, oh my God, I resonate with this guy so much. They just have to look at you as an established authority figure, right? So if you're somebody who values time and you say, hey man, I really appreciate you taking the time. I've got 30 minutes blocked off for us today. So basically how this call is going to be structured is X, Y, Z. You ready to go? That's a very wow, this guy's on the ball. He seems like somebody I can trust, right? So rapport doesn't have to be like all this glamorous talking the entire time, okay? But anyways, phase number 1 is a connection phase. Take the focus off of you, put the focus on the prospect, and find out their overarching goal of why they're on the call. You can do this with questions questions like, hey man, right? You're framing the call. There's two parts of connection phase, which is, I would say there's the framing, right? You have to actually frame the call. And then there's the goal, right? What are they on the call for, right? And so when they hop on the call, be, hey man, super happy you jumped on here. I've got 30 minutes blocked out for us, just so I kind of know what kind of even made you want to jump on this call in the first place, right? And then they'll tell you, like, awesome, great. So just so you know, so that's the goal, right? So you get the goal of why they're on the call. And this, you ask this goal so you can figure out what you ask next when we get to situation awareness, right? It's an easy transition. And the framing of the call is like, hey, the first bit of this call is super basic. I'm going to ask you some questions. You're going to ask me some questions if you want. Super chill. Just kind of get a better understanding of where you are and what you're currently doing to see if what we do could even kind of help you out. And then after that, if things kind of line up, I'll kind of show you what we have. And if it sounds good, we can kind of move from there. Does that sound good? You say, yep. And then boom, you get right into it, right? Super easy way to frame the call, just like that. So that's connection phase, right? It's the phase number one. First thing you do when they actually hop on the call. Number two, okay, is the situation, right? Situation phase. Okay, situation awareness is a better way to phrase it. So S-A, okay? And this is simply where you just find out their current situation. You find out what they're currently doing. The same way that when you go in a doctor's office, the doctor kind of asks you, like, how long have you had this thing, yada, 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 and they try and figure out your current situation. Right? What happened? And the purpose of situation phase is to figure out exactly that. Where are they? What are they currently doing? How are those things kind of going, and to get a gist of this person, so that at the end of the call you can help them make a decision, you can guide them to a certain way, right? So it's kind of understanding the current situation, right? And one of the best ways we can transition to figure out the situation, if let's say on the connection phase you asked, hey, why are you on this call? And they say, oh, you mentioned leads, I want more leads. Cool. Okay, what are you currently doing now to get more leads? How long have you been doing that? Why did you choose that method instead of that method, right? Questions like this to kind of get a better understanding of their current situation. Now, keep in mind, we don't need to ask when they started a business. Okay, we don't need to ask them what their wife's kid name is. We don't need to figure out, like, these irrelevant things are not prevalent. They're not something that's actually needed in the situation phase, right? It's only relevant to the goal. Now, granted, you can find out a bit of additional information, but the information you find out should only be information that you actually need to push and progress the sale forward. Alrighty, that's number two. Number three, so we get to the juice, right? This is what people know as PA. Wow, my mouse is glitching out. PA, which stands for problem awareness. Okay, my mouth is kind of glitching out here, but problem awareness. This is where you make the prospect aware of the problem they have, right? If you want somebody to make a change, if you want somebody to make a decision, you have to get them to realize there's a reason to make change. There's a reason to make a decision, and we do that by something called building the gap. There's a really good book I read the other day called Gap Selling. It talks about building this gap, which is the current state and then the desired state, right? And so the current state is finding their problem. And I guess the theory, the whole summarization of the book is that the bigger the gap, the easier somebody will be to close. Because if somebody, if somebody's here, right, the current state is, let's say, imagine this. Imagine somebody has a headache, right? Let's say this is great state and this is headache. The gap isn't that big. They're not likely to buy a bunch of expensive, medication. But if they're here, this is good, and they had cancer, the gap is a lot bigger. So the person is more likely to make a decision because the gap is bigger. Right? There's a bigger problem to solve. There's a bigger gap between current state and desired state. So phase number 3 is problem awareness, which is making them aware of their current problem. Right? So let's say if they said leads, there's a ton of different ways you can actually find out somebody's problem, right? One really good way and one really easy way I'll share with you. It's a super easy way. It's not the best way, but a super easy way is to ask them what their kind of goal is, right? Ask them like, hey, if next month was the perfect month, how many deals would you be doing? And then they're gonna give you maybe 10, right? And then you say, gotcha. And how many are you doing now? 3. Gotcha. So what do you feel is blocking you from getting to that 10 deal a month mark? They say something, you go, gotcha, and then boom, that's that thing is the problem right then and there, okay? That is one way. It's a very, very easy way. It's a very basic way. This isn't going to be super, super advanced. I want to keep this very high level so we can understand and digest these core concepts in our brain so we can know them forever, okay? So that is problem awareness, making the person aware of the problems, right? And you go into a bit more. As a matter of fact, let me actually pull something up. Okay, it's glitching. My computer's freezing up. Okay. Anyways, back to this. So a couple of the questions that you kind of want to ask here, and some things you can figure out is, for example, like, hey, how long has this thing been an issue, right? So if they tell you leads is the issue, and how long has that been an issue, right? And then you also want to figure out the impact, right? What is this problem causing, right? How is it affecting them? How is it affecting the business, right? How is it affecting them emotionally, right? You want to kind of figure out what is the impact of this problem, right? And then we can go in the past, right? How long has it been an issue? issue? In the future, what happens if this continues to be an issue, right? Because there's a famous thing, which is if you want somebody to realize that their problem is bigger than it is, go further back in the future and go farther ahead in the future. My bad. Further back in the past, farther ahead in the future, right? Because the longer you extrapolate the time horizon of the problem, the bigger the problem seems. So, right, if they say, oh, leads is the issue. Gotcha. How long has it been an issue? Gotcha. What if that continues to be an issue? And then they realize, whoa, this is a really big problem that needs to get solved, which once again, if they have a problem that needs to get solved, you build the gap bigger, they're more likely to actually make change when it comes time to actually closing them. Okay. So that's phase number 3, which is problem awareness, finding out their problem and making sure that they are aware of their problem, right? Nobody will buy something if they're not aware of the problem that nobody will buy something if you just pitch on something, but they're not aware of the problem, right? Which is why problem awareness is very, very crucial. Then we get to solution awareness. This is Matt Ryder's favorite phase, and he says that this is where the sale is truly made, right? Which is solution awareness. I won't actually write the whole thing, but solution awareness. And this is where you simply make the prospect solution aware. Not your solution, you're not pitching here. You're making them aware of the solution and what it would do for them. Okay, and as a matter of fact, I'll pull up a little cheat sheet that you guys can use. I had this as my wallpaper for time and time again, so you can kind of see, how you can memorize these 9 phases with this little image right here. Okay, and as you can see, solution awareness. Right? Like, what would that solution look like for the prospect? I recommend that you guys all go search this picture and make it your iPhone wallpaper. I did that for months on end until I drilled these frameworks, these 9 phases in my head, so I could never, ever forget them. And that way, when I'm on a sales call, I don't need a script. I don't need to be constantly looking over. I don't need to remember the questions. I can actually have a dialogue. I can actually have a conversation with the prospect. Right? Because one of the most important things about sales is you're helping somebody make a decision. You're helping somebody change. You have to understand, you have to listen to the prospect, right? Sales is a dialogue, not a monologue. It's 2 people talking back and forth, right? And if you're reading off a script, if you ever listen to somebody read off a script, are they having a conversation with you, or are they just projecting and vomiting all over you with all their words? Well, it's the second one, it's the latter, right? And so in sales, we want to have a conversation, and we can't have a conversation when we're reading off a script, okay? So, phase number 4, right? Solution awareness. Screenshot this. Everybody, screenshot this. Make this your wallpaper. Okay, phase number 4, solution awareness, right? As you can see, there's even little questions here that you can ask, right? What is the ideal solution? What is the tangible outcome of the solution, right? What if the solution happens, what would happen for them? What would happen physically? What would happen financially? What would happen emotionally? Right? What would happen for the family? What would happen for their business? Right? And what are they kind of looking for? Right? Those are some questions you can ask. And you know what this really does? This builds the gap. It builds the gap from where they are to where they want to go. Right? And this is where you take them on an emotional roller coaster. Right? You brought them to a super low with problem awareness. Right? So as a visualization, problem awareness, you brought them super, super low, for example. And then you bring them to solution awareness, you bring them super, super high. And then we get to phase number 5, which is consequence, and we bring them super, super low again, right? So here, problem awareness, we make them problem aware of like, oh shit, my life sucks. Then we make them solution aware. Wow, my life would be so good if this problem got fixed, right? It would be so awesome. And then we go to consequence, right? Which is like, well, I need to make this decision because if not, bad things happen. Which leads us to phase number 5 of the sales call. Okay, phase number 5 is the consequence. What happens if they don't solve this issue? Simple as that, right? What happens if they don't solve the issue? I can't explain it any other way. What is the cost of inaction? Right? Because if you want somebody to change, if you want somebody to make a decision, you have to make them feel that there's a reason to make a decision. You have to make them feel pain enough to change, right? If your head doesn't hurt that bad, you probably wouldn't go to the doctor. But if your head really, really, really hurts, you'd probably go. And so we need to make people feel that so they have a reason to change. Okay, let's go back. Let's reference our, little cheat sheet again. Okay, consequence questions, right? What happens if they don't achieve the goal? What happens then? Right? You got to make them say this and understand, right? And one really good persuasion tactic is that one of the biggest things in persuasion is, one of the most persuasive tactics, is getting somebody to say something. So instead of saying like, oh, that would suck if that didn't happen, you'd lose out, you get them to say it, right? You get them to say what would happen if they don't achieve it. Wow, man, if I don't actually solve this problem, my business is going to go under, my wife is going to divorce me. Whoa, that's a really big thing that we need to take care of, right? And now they have a better and a bigger reason to actually take action when it comes time to pitch them. Okay, which, speaking of pitch, let's transition to the pitch. Okay, as you saw, phase number 6 is transition. Okay, this is where you transition from these phases to the pitch. Okay, and so the transition period would be something like, hey man, based on kind of what you've told me and some of the things you've been doing, it sounds like what we do could really help you solve X, Y, Z. Repeat back their problem so they understand that it's not a product, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Is very custom to their certain situation, or so. Repeat back to the problem, right? Sounds like what we do could really help you solve that low lead quality you have to help you get to that 10 deal a month mark. So is it kind of cool if I share kind of what we have? Something super simple, right? Everybody has a different way of doing the transition, but that's a super seamless way that you can actually do the transition to go from the consequence phase right into actually pitching them. And notice, I'll share with you something here, that there's a distinct difference between selling somebody and pitching somebody. Pitching them is when you tell them what you do. Selling them is everything before, which, as you can notice by this, phase number 6 is transition. Phase number 7, can we guess? Can anybody guess what it is? Hopefully you saw. Okay, it's presentation, right? It's pitching. Okay, so it's pitching. And if you notice something, there's a direct difference between pitching and selling. And you'll notice that pitching is one phase and selling is the 6 phases before. Right? This is where you actually sell them. Right? The sale is made. Right? The sale is made here in these phases, not here. Your pitch is not what sells the prospect. Your pitch is not the reason why they buy, right? If you've really, really, really sold them on the fact that, wow, they have a big problem, and wow, their life would be really good if they solved it, and wow, there is a direct reason why they need to do this now, right? There's a consequence if they don't take it now. Even if you're selling something ridiculous, they will still buy if they truly believe that it is the thing for them. Okay, so selling happens here, not here. But we get to number 7, which is where you pitch, which is simply where you pitch. But there's one thing I want to mention here. You have to pitch your service in a distinct way. You can't just say, oh, here's my service. You want to pitch your service as a mechanism to solve the problems that your prospect has, right? And so when pitching, you want to repeat back, oh, we do this to solve X. And make it very customized. That doesn't mean you can't use a pitch deck, okay? But you want to make the pitch customized in the sense of, hey, we do this to solve XYZ problem you were talking about. So remember how you said that XYZ was an issue? So we do this to solve that. And therefore they feel like, oh wow, this is literally the perfect customized solution for me. And they're reinforced that, man, this will work for me. Okay, this will work for me. Then we get to phase number 8. Okay, so after you've pitched them, okay, or like, I guess while you're pitching them, or after you pitch them, you want to get to a commitment question. I don't know why my thing is glitching. Commit. I can't write anything. Whatever. So we'll say commitment. Okay. Phase number 8 is commit, which is where you get the prospect to commit to making change. Right. These are I like to call temperature checking, and these are some of the questions you can do in this phase. Are so do you feel that this would work for you? And they say yes. Why? How come? What part specifically? And you get them to repeat back to you why they think it's going to work very well, to get them to commit to making change, to get them to commit that they think this is the right thing for them. There's something called temperature checking, right? Temperature checking. Then, after they've commit, right, depending on where you pitch, where you reveal the price, right? If you reveal price here, if you're Matt Ryder, you reveal the price here. Some people reveal the price after they pitch, right? So they'll pitch, and then they'll get them to commit, and then they'll say the price, right? They'll get them to commit and say, do you think this is right for you? They say, yes. How come? X, Y, Z. What part? That part specifically. Cool. Where do we go from here? And the prospect's going to say, well, what's the price? And then you share the price, okay? And then we get to the last phase, which is objection handling, right? I'll just say OH for short. Objection handling. This is where you handle the objections, okay? This video is not going to cover how to handle objections. If you want a really good video, a really good framework, a 2-step framework on how to handle objections, go watch it. I'll link it below as well. I've made a really good video talking about literally the only 2 steps you ever need to handle any single objection ever, okay? Ever. One crucial thing I want to mention. One of the best things, we'll recap this in a second. One of the best things you can do is ask them a commitment question before you actually pitch the price. Ask them a commitment question before you pitch, something called temperature checking. You want to make sure that your prospect is actually ready to be pitched. You want to make sure your prospect is actually ready to have the price revealed. Right? There's nothing worse than pitching somebody, saying the price, and they say, yeah, well, let me go back and read this again and that, right? You don't want them doing that. You want them to be ready to buy. And the only thing you want to worry about then and there is handling the objections, right? Which... well, you can watch another video. There's only 2 types of objections, okay? And some of the best ways, there's only 3 types of objections, okay? Actually, I'll show you how objections work, okay? So when somebody gives an objection, okay, there is 3 types of objections, which is number 1, fear. Number 2 is money. And number 3 is logistics. However, You cannot solve an objection till fear has been solved, right? You cannot overcome a money objection if they're still scared to make a decision, okay? So, right, you can't overcome the partner objection, right? If they're not even sure if this is the right thing for them. Right? So fear/uncertainty, okay, is one of the biggest objections most people get. Anything like, I need to think about it, I'm not sure if this is right for me, or even when people say it's too expensive, it's typically not it's too expensive, it's typically that they're scared. And so we handle this objection first. Once I said, I have a whole video on this, go watch it. That's a whole entirely different video. Now, let's review, let's go back, okay? Because we've just covered the 9 phases that you can use to close any single sales call. That is super easy to remember and also goes with human psychology. It works fundamentally well with how our brains operate. It doesn't, as you can see, there's no scripting here. It's just 9 phases, a framework to remember on how you can guide the call. And I'll say something, you don't have to, like if you bounce from here to here, it's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world, right? Whereas in a script, if you go from here to here, you can't go back, right? This framework is very forgiving, it's very amazing, and it goes well with human psychology. So let's refer back to our nice little handy dandy cheat sheet, okay, and recap the phases for you so you can see it all pretty here, because obviously my handwriting or my writing with this mouse isn't the best. So phase number 1, connection phase. Take the focus off of you, put it on the prospect. Why are they here? What are they looking for? What's their overarching goal for the call? Phase 2, situation. What are they currently doing? How long have they been doing it, right? What do they like about it? What don't they like about it? Understand their current situation. Phase 3, problem awareness. What is the problem? What's it causing? What's the impact of the problem? Blah 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 blah. Phase 4, solution awareness. What would the solution look like? What would it do for them, right? Get them to paint that picture of how amazing their life would be with the solution. Phase number 5, consequence. And what if that doesn't happen? Phase 6, transition to presenting the solution, right? Gets temperature check here. Make sure they're ready to go. Phase 7, present. Literally show them and get commitment that they're ready to make a change. Commitment. Help them to commit and take the next step to purchase your solution. Handle objections. The last thing you need to do is handle the objections. So that is fundamentally, bear with me, I'm going to have a couple more things to say, but that is fundamentally how you actually take sales calls. That is fundamentally how you should structure your call. It's using this framework, and it's very simple and very easy to remember because the sequence of questioning actually makes sense. And it's easy to follow along. It also works well with human psychology. There's no weird things you have to do here. Now, if you want some other crazy training, right, a lot of this is, what questions to ask. When can you ask a question? How can you ask a question a certain way? How can you get the real reason why? And the list can go on and on and on about tonality and body language and how you look and what your setup looks like. And there's so many other sales things to talk about. But this is supposed to be the fundamentals, how you actually take sales calls, how you should structure a sales call to ensure success and ensure you have a structured approach to the call, not a random bunch of script messages and you hope it goes well, right? So let's look at one more thing and then we will run here, okay? Which is this image, talking about the outdated sales approach, right? Which is this high resistance selling, right? Which focuses a lot on pushing and presentations and pitching, right? That's the outdated approach. The new way, right, is the NEPQ, neural, logical, emotional, persuasion, questioning, right? As you noticed, if we looked here, almost all of these phases weren't blabs. They weren't just, vomiting on the prospect. It was just questions. It's a sequence of questions, right, to get the prospect to answer, right? Like I said earlier, one of the most prevalent, one of the best persuasion tactics you could ever use is to make somebody say it, right? If you want somebody to do something, make them think it was their own idea. When somebody says something, they'll likely stay consistent with that, right? Because the consistency bias. So when somebody says something, it's a lot more powerful than if you say it, which is why these are all questions to get them to say the answer, to get them to say the thing, right? If you tell somebody what their problem is, it may affect them a little bit, but if you get them to tell you what their problem is, they're like, oh, wow, because they said it, right? They were the ones that said it. It came from them. And so psychologically it has a bigger impact on the person. So that being said, that is the 9 phases, right, of NEPQ, the 9 phases, how you should structure your sales calls, whether you're a beginner, whether you're intermediate, whether you're advanced. This is the way to structure sales calls in this new day and age, getting rid of all the high pressure sales tactics, all the scummy tactics, all the weird scripting and all these weird little, things that people use to try and close people and all these crazy objection handling. If you can truly sell somebody, which happens here and mainly in these 4 phases right here, right? If you can truly sell somebody and get them to buy into making change, not even your product, right? Remember, to just buy in on making change, right? These phases are meant to buy them in on even making change. If you have a semi-decent prospect, they will buy, okay? So that being said, I hope this was helpful. If you have any other questions, about how to structure your call, like what else do I do, Stefan, anything like that, drop them down in the comments. I respond to absolutely everybody, and my goal is to just provide this information to anybody so that you can go and travel the world, live a life filled with purpose, go buy your family a Ferrari, go buy yourself a McLaren, and give back to the people who gave to you. Okay, so that being said, hope you have an amazing day. Once again, if you have any questions, drop them down below. I hope you close your next sales call. Peace.